Well, we made it to the end of our homeschool year, and today I'm going to reflect on some of the wins and some of the misses of our fourth quarter.
Morning has broken, my windows are open, wanna feel...
Hey guys, welcome back to My Practically Imperfect Life. My name's Abby. I'm a homeschooling mom of two. This past year, I had a junior and I had a sophomore. And as I was kind of thinking back to how our fourth quarter in our homeschool year went, I realized this tied in really nicely with the topic for this month's homeschool show and tell video series. This is a video series hosted by Abby from Rooted in Rest and Jessica from the Waldeck Way. Highly recommend you check out both of them. They have a lot of great information on their channel. I've been watching Abby on Rooted in Rest for years, even though my kids are older than hers and she has a much wider age span. I like a lot of the information and the materials that she shares on her channel. And this whole video series is where they choose a topic each month related to homeschooling, and they invite other homeschooling moms to submit videos to that playlist. This month for June, we're talking about wins and misses, kind of what went well, what didn't. And I thought, well, that kind of describes the fourth quarter perfectly for us. So gonna do two birds, one stone here. And let me just start with some of the things that were kind of misses for us in the fourth quarter, or at least they kind of felt like misses. Our fourth quarter included the month of May. And if you watched the goals video that I just posted, I talked a little bit about some reasons why I needed to take a few weeks off on YouTube during the month of May, kind of related to some, they ended up being kind of some health concerns, and it was just a mental overload for me. And because of that, I also started to kind of take some things out in the homeschool as well that allowed my kids to refocus on some other things. We do group subjects, or at least up until this point, we have done group subjects. My kids do individual work, and then we do some things together. We do Bible study together, a daily devotional. We do our foreign language together. And at the start of the school year, I also had topical studies in there, along with a read out loud. Now, about halfway through the school year, I realized we just weren't having enough time to include all of the things. So we pared down to just foreign language, Bible study. And as we were getting into May, I was like, you know what? We finished a chapter in our German. We're not going to start another one. We finished a devotional. We're not going to start another one. My kids do Bible study on their own individually. They attend youth group, so it's not like they're not getting any Bible study in. We just weren't going to do any group work. We were strictly going to let them work on their independent subjects. It felt like a miss to me because I like that time. I like when we're all sitting around together and working on things, but there comes a point where it feels like it's, how do I put this right? It's more of a chore to try to get them together at the same time. My kids have very different schedules related to work and their extracurriculars, which makes that sound like optional stuff. But my kids are very active in sports. And this is a very big year, especially for my oldest. There's a lot of things she's got to try to fit in. They also have very different sleep schedules. And I'm not one who's going to tell them, you must be up at 6 o'clock. If that's not how their body clock is working. That's not how my body clock works. So my daughter gets up early naturally. She wants to get started very early. My son wakes up a little bit later, and that's when he wants to get started. And usually he's more productive in the early afternoon, and my daughter's more productive very early in the morning. So finding that time that was perfect for both of them has just gotten harder as they've gotten older. And I thought, well, I'm just not going to fight it anymore. We're just going to have them really focus in on finishing their independent subjects. I wanted them to start to have a lighter load in May anyways, as all of the summer things start to pick up and as they start completing some of their independent subjects. So group work went away. And if you watched my curriculum choice videos for next year, I actually talked about how we really aren't going to do group work anymore. They're going to be doing strictly independent devotionals. They're going to be still studying a foreign language, but they're going to be doing it for the most part independently. And that's going to feel very weird, but I think it will make for a less stressful schedule next year, especially since my oldest will also be doing dual enrollment and she's going to have to fit that in, and we're going to have to work around that schedule to a degree. So it felt like a bit of a miss. The other thing was not finishing on time. We have always had the goal to be done by the end of May, if we can be. Again, summer schedules are crazy for us. Golf ramps up, and there are a bunch of golf tournaments. Most of them are multi-day, plus you have to get practice time in. There's travel time. We have camps. They also just want to spend time with their friends. They're both working summer jobs. And yeah, I just wanted to have it all done, and we weren't done by the end of May, at least not with everything. We were done with the majority of our subjects. My daughter still had to finish up some final papers for her literature program this year. She does the Excellence in Literature, and it was some long novels and really extensive writing, and she just needed a little more time to finish those up. We also got behind in our chemistry in the kitchen course. We had kind of paused to allow my daughter to spend some more time studying for SAT, and then we had to restart it, and so we actually had to take some extra time going into June in order to allow completion of that as well. So we didn't quite make the goal of getting done when I wanted to. And I'm trying to be okay with that. The kids actually haven't complained about needing to work a little longer into June. And I'm trying to match that attitude that they have. I guess I'm just one who's like, well, if I have it scheduled to start on this day and end on this day, we should be done on that day. And I'm trying to let myself just be okay with the fact that we had to flex a little bit, because they're fine with it. They understand that they do need to complete things all the way on those subjects, and they've just been real troopers about getting it done. But it felt a little bit like a miss to not get that all the way completed. And honestly, those were probably the two biggest things that just kind of felt like misses to me, was just that piece of it. We did wrap up our math curriculum fairly early in the fourth quarter. In fact, I don't think Emma had any math to do in May. I think she got it done way early, if I remember correctly. Like, she was done weeks ago. And I've discussed this a couple of times, and also in the curriculum choice videos and my math curriculum review videos. But she ended the year as unhappy with that math curriculum as she started. My son was still pretty neutral, but we obviously, in our curriculum choices, we are making some changes for next year. And I think that's for the best. I think that's going to work out much better for both of them, for us to go that route. So, I mean, I wish they would have, I don't want to say enjoyed math, because I think you either love math or you tolerate it. But I really wish they hadn't, like, especially her, I wish she hadn't disliked it as much as she did this year. It felt like a real miss for me as a parent, because I made that choice to have her do that program, and I really hated to see her just kind of struggle with it as much as she did. That being said, we had some major wins with our curriculum. We had a phenomenal year with our social study history courses. We did Guest Hollow Whirlwind World History for my 10th grader, and my daughter did the Government Econ Personal Finance course from them. And man, they made it through all of those books and the workbooks and the activities, and they learned so much. It's been really interesting, especially to see my oldest really incorporating all of the things she's been reading about and learning about into kind of her everyday life, as far as making financial decisions when she's talking about how she's saving money from her job and what she wants to put it towards, and thinking about things like budgeting for her car expenses. We were discussing needing to have certain maintenance work done on her car, and looking at tire prices and all of that. And so she's taking that personal finance stuff into consideration when we're hearing about things on the news, especially things in this like really crazy political environment that we're in as we're ramping up towards elections, how she's kind of analyzing what she's hearing. She's still extremely disappointed she won't be 18 to vote in the election this year. She doesn't turn 18 until the winter, so she's a bit bummed that she's going to miss out on the opportunity to vote this year. But I just love seeing that she's really taking all of that information in and applying it already. I think that's going to be great for her in the future. So I think it was just a huge win. Those 2 courses were great for both of them. The other thing that was a real win was watching their attitudes in the fourth quarter. Again, I thought it was a miss that we weren't doing things kind of on time or on the schedule, I thought. But I have been really impressed by both of them in how willing they have been to be flexible and patient with me when I needed to take a pause on something, or if I needed some extra time to prepare something for them. They understood that I was dealing with a lot, and they were very empathetic about that. They did a wonderful job of just kind of reading what was going on with me, and they were picking up the pace at home. They were helping out with extra things without asking. They would just go, well, this needs done. I'm just going to do it for Mom. They were super helpful with, helping with outdoor projects, indoor projects, and with the school stuff. When they saw that we were going to need them more time, they were like, okay. They sometimes, they take their work outside. There were some days where I was working outside and Emma had a picnic blanket set up, and she took all of her schoolwork outside and she would sit out there and she would work on it. And occasionally she'd ask me a question, but she just, said, well, I want to enjoy the sunshine, but I got to get my work done. And so she just did it. And my son the same way. He would have these really focused afternoons where he would just be kind of powering through things that he needed to do and trying to stay as on pace as possible. And so the positive attitude they have was just wonderful. I think that really helped decrease my stress in the fourth quarter, where I was feeling like, I'm like failing them and not doing this, or I'm failing them and not having this done on time. And they just, they brought that ray of sunshine to the fourth quarter. It was extremely helpful to have them just be so helpful and be so patient and understanding with everything. Another thing I thought was a win has to do with how we reviewed our curriculum. I know that doesn't have so much to do with what we were actually completing in the fourth quarter, but I feel like it's pertinent because it's going to really impact our homeschool going forward. This year, more than in any other year, I wanted to find out what they really thought about things. I mean, they're older. They should really have a say in kind of what they're studying and what approach we're taking to things, because they, at this point, understand how they learn and they understand how they learn best. So when I was preparing my series where I did like the curriculum reviews, where I talked about the different subjects and what we really thought about them, I asked them, what do you think about this? How has this been working for you? What are things that are good about it? What are things that are bad about it? And I really took that to heart when choosing what we were going to do the next year. And so those choices of curriculum really came largely from listening to my teens and finding out what their opinions were on everything. I mean, ultimately, yes, it's my decision what I'm going to purchase and what we're going to use, but as far as like the big changes we make, like my son's going to be doing a huge change in how we approach English next year, big change. We're changing up math. We are adjusting like the science curriculum we're going to do, choosing which courses my daughter was going to do dual enrollment for versus us finding another curriculum for it. And even adding in like her anatomy class next year. That's all based on stuff that they told me that worked or didn't work for them this past year or in previous years, and what they were thinking for upcoming years. And if you have students who are starting to get older, or even your upper middle school students, I would really recommend doing something like that. Take some time as you get to the end of the school year and find out what your kids thought about it. If they were miserable doing a curriculum, if they really didn't enjoy it at all, it's probably not going to be a great fit to continue on with. Even if it's something you've used for years, even if it's something that you've used for all of your other kids. I mean, every student is different. My kids have extremely different learning styles, different preferences, and much of what I used for one student would not have worked for the other. The electives, some electives I have both my kids do, but there are many that I tailor to one or the other based on their interests and their personal goals. And it doesn't have to be, hours and hours of conversation to find this out. Just simply sit down and say, hey, can I chat with you about your English course? What did you think of the books you read this year? What did you think about how the textbook was laid out? Did that help you learn it, or did it seem like a struggle? Do you feel like you've mastered those concepts or not? And, what could we have done differently? And you can use that information to make some really informed decisions on what you want to use the next year. So I found that extremely helpful. I'm definitely going to do it again at the end of the next school year when I'm talking with my son about what he wants to do his senior year. And even our conversations this year really started to bring up his thoughts on his senior year. He's also wanting to do dual enrollment, but he's also looking at trade school. So now we're starting to have that discussion about, well, what does that mean for our senior year? How does that shape up that and what we should be doing, what we should be preparing you for? That's why we've got this really cool electronics elective we're going to have him do next year. Everything stems from those conversations with my kids. And that's really our Q4 in a nutshell. Now, I could go through and tell you exactly what we did in the fourth quarter for every single subject, but honestly, I've covered so much of that in past videos. If you haven't seen my curriculum review videos, the ones where I went subject by subject and I talked specifically about what they did for like English and math and science and electives, go back and check out that whole series. I've got them down, I believe, in my curriculum choice video series, because I go a lot into what they were doing and what they were covering. But when I talk about our wins and misses for the fourth quarter, I think it's more these generalizations, me feeling bummed about timing and having to stop something that we had been doing. But I also have to understand that was necessary. And the positives, my kids having fantastic attitudes about needing to be flexible, about needing to have more time, about jumping in and helping and getting their feedback on things. Like those are kind of a little more generalized wins or misses, but they are still really important ones. And as we kind of come to a close in our homeschool year, I think back to myself, like, how do I feel about the year overall? And I love what we studied this year. A lot of the topics that we studied, I felt like we covered a lot of good things. I feel like our year overall, we had to get off schedule more than in any previous year. And that was hard for me because I'm very like type A, OCD. I want to be on schedule with stuff. That was a hard thing for me to do, but it was necessary in a lot of cases. So it was a mental shift for me to realize that it's okay for us to be, behind on things, or to need to flex and move things around. It's a hard thing for me to wrap my brain around. The other thing that was really hard for me this year is that I felt like, with the exception of certain subjects, like I did a lot of helping with my daughter with math and continued to work with my son on English, but for a lot of subjects, I really just was kind of in the background so much. Like they just didn't need me every day, all the time, for every subject. And that's part of the goal as they get older. Our goal is, as our kids get older, we're teaching them to be more independent learners, to be able to look at the assignment, figure out what they need to do, complete it, and then come to us with questions or for guidance. But it's just a different mindset than when they are younger. You think when your kids are, when they're still in elementary and they're learning a lot of new information, and they really need you to help them with like almost everything. Like they've got questions on everything, or they need you to direct teach them a lot of things. And then they get to middle school and they're a little more independent, right? They maybe are doing readings or watching tutorial videos, and they're tackling the assignments. And yes, they'll come to you and they'll need some guidance. And there might be things here like, oh, you're learning to write a research paper. Okay, I'll walk you through this. And then we get to high school, and now it's more independence. But as we went from those early years of high school to these later ones, boy, it's just felt like this huge shift. I mean, I'm watching them become, you know, young adults. They are managing their time. They're managing their income from their jobs. They're talking with their bosses and handling those things. They are planning out their work. You know, if they've got something that's due on, I say is due on a certain day, they're planning out what they need to work on and when. And they're making adjustments independently. You know, hey, I've got this going on, so I'm going to plan to work extra long on this day in order to make sure I can do that thing I need to do. And they're doing all of that on their own, and they're updating me, but they're handling it. And there's less and less that they are having to come to me for try to figure it out, to try to be guided through it. And it just feels weird. You know, I'm a huge fan of the show The Chosen, and there is a scene in I think it's in the second season where Mary, the mother of Jesus, is like, well, he's grown up and he doesn't need me anymore. And you kind of get this feeling like she just doesn't know what to do outside of her identity as the mom and being really needed. And later in the same episode, he makes a point of telling her, what would I do without you? Just having her there for support. And it very much feels like something similar. You know, we raise our kids up and they are growing and they're becoming independent and they're learning all these things and they're getting ready for that next stage in life. And we start to feel less and less needed. But just being there to support them, just them knowing that we're there encouraging them, that we're there to help when they need it, and we're always available if they have questions, that they have our love and they have our support. I think that's a highly important role that we can play as our kids get older. So I hope I hope that this video helps you in some sense. Again, I apologize that I'm not going to go into some super deep details on exactly projects and assignments, but these were things that were kind of on my heart as far as wins and misses for the fourth quarter and just some reflections on the end of our school year as a whole. I am looking forward to a fun summer with both of my kids and with my family, and being able to enjoy some time off of school and doing some other things with them. And I'm also really looking forward to seeing how our next homeschool year goes. Let me know down in the comments, how did your school year wrap up? Were there any big wins or things that you wish had done differently? Are there any things that you're really looking forward to as we go into our summer break? And be sure to check out some of the other videos in this month's Homeschool Show and Tell playlist. There are always some really unique perspectives from other homeschool moms, as we all have kids of different ages and we have different approaches to homeschooling. Thanks so much for joining me for today's video, everybody. I'll see you in the next one. Until then, happy homeschooling.